everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming to this webinar. My name is Zoe Crawford, and I'm going to be speaking today on the topic of customer service. Usually at the beginning of these webinars, I just kind of give a brief overview, introduction on myself. Many of you probably know who I am, but I am an account manager here at Reliant Behavioral Health, and I'm also a psychotherapist. And I integrate a lot of my knowledge that I've gained through working with clients into the webinars and the presentations that I do for our clients here at RBH. So I'm really glad. It looks like several hundred of you are on the line, and we really appreciate your taking the time out of your busy workday to listen to this. So the goal of today's webinar is to really discuss what good customer service is and strategies for dealing with customers and also coworkers when things aren't going quite as you have planned. So first off, what is service? Okay, you see that slide up on the screen. I want to say right off the bat, don't be scared. Customer service is absolutely not rocket science. Nothing that I am going to talk about is confusing. It's very basic, very easy information that anybody can integrate into their daily work life. So with that said, you want to know that going to the second slide, the image is everything. First of all, you want to know how your customers perceive you. So put yourself in their shoes and try to view yourself in a new light. The way I compare this would be, you should talk to others about their perceptions of you. You can also ask your customers what their experiences are with your company, because they are really likely to have the most helpful feedback. So you want to start by knowing how others see you, okay? Once you know that, you can move on to defining who your customer is, and actually, more importantly, who is not your customer. So a few words on this. You want to have a working definition of the population that you serve as a company, because it will focus you and help you create more targeted marketing and outreach to your base. However, I want to focus on this idea of who isn't your customer, because a lot of times people in a company, they will know who their customer is, but they kind of forget about the people that they're not there to serve. That is missing a really big opportunity. The exclusionary criteria of who your customer is or is not is actually going to help you, because armed with that knowledge, you can then network with other professionals in your field who do work with people that perhaps you do not, and then you can create a referral base and a referral source, and you can refer the clients who are not appropriate for you to others, and hopefully it'll create a reciprocal relationship moving forward. So it is really important to define who isn't your customer and use that as an opportunity for growth, both current and in the future. So moving on to the next slide. What do you need when it comes to customer service? Number one on the list is a sense of humor, because things that can go wrong will go wrong. And if you don't have the ability to laugh about it, you're going to have a much more difficult time adjusting to the demands placed upon you. You also want to have a sense of perspective and balance. This means you want a sense of what's truly important, and really keep that focus so you know how to respond to things that may happen. You also absolutely need a passionate belief in your product or your service. It's really difficult to be enthusiastic about your service if you don't believe in it. As a very concrete example, let's say you own and operate a bakery, but you don't actually eat sweets. Well, that's a problem because it's going to be a lot more difficult to demonstrate passion in what you do. It just doesn't come across the same way. It can lack a certain sense of authenticity. So you absolutely want to believe in what you're doing. And so what do customers want? Again, I want to emphasize this is absolutely not rocket science. It's very basic. You want to put yourself in the customer's mindset. And you want to just quite simply do what you say you're going to do in a timely manner with confidence and integrity and concern for their well-being. And when that's done, you want to have something to show for it. And you can see just the words on the screen right now kind of sums that up. We forget what it takes to retain customers nowadays because we have such sophisticated electronics and ways of communicating. But again, it really goes back to basics about the best ways to retain customers. Again, just do what you say that you're going to do, and listen to what the customer needs, and make sure that you're adding value that the customer cannot add themselves. And in that way, you kind of make yourself indispensable. You need to contribute something that the customer cannot, and then you're adding value. And then the emotional response ranges that any customer can have are those four basic groups at the bottom: glad, sad, mad, and scared. Clearly, with customer service, we are aiming for glad response, okay? Although there are a range of responses, and we will, in a few minutes, talk about how to deal with the less than positive response. However, to any customer that you are dealing with, you're the company. You can think about it as, first impressions tend to linger, and it's very difficult to change somebody's first impression of you if it was initially negative. Studies have shown that we form opinions and judgments about other people within a couple of minutes of meeting them. If the initial response is negative, you then have to work that much harder to change their perceptions and create a good working relationship in the future. And how you present yourself to that customer is very important. Another example, when you call a new doctor and want to make an appointment, how many of us have had a negative interaction with the receptionist who answers the phone? If we're lucky enough to get a real person on the line. We can often use that interaction to make snap judgments about the doctor's competence or the amount of concern that they might have for us as a patient. Those first impressions are very important. As I was just talking about the phone skills, it's everything you do. To the customers will notice everything, whether you kind of are aware of it or not, even small things. People absolutely notice the little details in addition to the bigger picture. So we're talking a lot about what it means to serve customers of your business, but there's also customer service from within your company, in your workplace, with your colleagues. And here's the thing, if you treat each other well and with respect, it is very likely to automatically spill over into your interactions with customers. You want to make sure that, you don't need to be best friends with your coworkers, but if you have a sense of respect and everybody takes responsibility for their own projects, but is also willing to chip in and work as a group when needed, and have flexible responses to the needs of the company, that is going to make your workplace that much more productive. And then, again, the customers who interact with you can absolutely sense whether the workplace is a positive environment. I'm sure many of us have worked in places where coworkers don't get along, and that kind of discontent will often then influence your interactions with the customers because you're not feeling supported in the workplace. So what are some of the performance standards for working with clients? Well, you can see some of them on the screen, and again, it's very basic stuff. And when you have, as a consumer, a positive interaction with someone at a company, it can positively influence your entire day. You know, good customer service is so unusual these days that, you know, when I work with someone who provides really a minimal level of customer service, such as making eye contact, giving me their attention, and thanking me for my business, I will often ask to speak with their supervisor to give good feedback. I think a lot of times we're very attuned to negative interactions with people, and we'll often kind of go up the levels to speak with a supervisor when we're unhappy with service. But far too few of us will actually go and give positive feedback to a supervisor. And it's really important to try to do that. It'll make you feel good for acknowledging somebody's efforts, and it'll make them feel good like they're making a contribution, okay? You know, apologies to anybody who's had positive experiences at the Department of Motor Vehicles, but you know, I think that our whole idea of going to the DMV could really be improved if they worked on their basic customer service skills. So just think of that as an example of something that perhaps you don't want to emulate. So how do we go about building relationships, both with clients and really with coworkers as well? You want to conduct yourself with a lot of honesty and give positive feedback when you can. You want to define what your goals and objectives are for the relationship itself. For example, at the beginning of this webinar, I said up front what we were going to be talking about, and the fact that this would apply to many different interactions with in your own lives, because it's important to know what's the goal of this interaction. You also want to make sure to thank people at the end of an interaction, because that really reinforces that you're grateful for their business and would like to continue working with them. Again, it's a partnership, so you want to emphasize the word we and not the word I. So what are some of these key things that can really make a relationship positive? The one thing that I want to focus on this slide is under-promising and over-delivering. And I think it'll come up on the screen in just a moment. How many times have we been promised something by someone and we don't get it by the deadline? It's very frustrating. It colors the rest of your interactions. And what happens is, you know, you may or may not want to move forward in that business relationship. If you have a policy of under-promising and over-delivering, then you end up looking like a rock star because everyone's happy. You provided what they needed in a shorter time frame than what they thought it would be. Always give the customer more than they're expecting, and that's a really great way to make sure that you retain their business. There's also a few other tips here. You want to make sure to listen to what the customers are saying and attempt to solve issues. And sometimes you can't solve issues, and we'll get to how to deal with that as well in some future slides. Okay? So what are the deadly phrases in customer service? Well, there's a couple that I want to focus on this list, and they'll come up individually. You want to make sure that you return phone calls and emails in a timely manner, okay? Because when a customer reaches out to you with an issue, you want to make sure that they feel listened to. I have a policy where even if I don't necessarily have time to speak with someone, when they leave me after they leave me a voicemail, maybe I'm traveling, my personal policy is to call them back and say that I got their message, but that I'm traveling, and could we arrange a time to speak in the next couple of days. That way you're acknowledging that you received their message and setting up a time to deal with whatever it is they've called you about. Okay, you also want to make sure that you're on time. When you're chronically late for appointments, that really demonstrates a lack of concern on your part for the other party. Again, I'll kind of go back to the doctor's office example. It's very difficult when we have a doctor appointment and we find ourselves waiting in the waiting room for, upwards of an hour or two because the person is running late. That gives us, again, this feeling that we're not cared about and perhaps that our time is not as important as the other person's. Obviously, things happen, and, we're always, sometimes we're all late, but when it becomes chronic, that's when customers question your ability to help them, okay? So keep that in mind. What else kind of comes up that can really damage a professional relationship? In this list, I want to talk about the phrase, it's company policy, okay? I'm sure we've all heard that. It's kind of a phrase that we'll use if we want to get a customer off our back, maybe to stop complaining. But here's the thing. People don't want to fit into a policy. They want to be known as individuals, and they want more connection as opposed to less. Even if there is a company policy against doing what it is that a customer is asking for, you can phrase it in a different way, and you can make sure to have them explain what they want and maybe redirect them to something that your company can do to be helpful, as opposed to stating its company policy to put up a wall in between you and the customer. So how do you deal with it when customers complain? Well, here are some tips. I want to say up front that we all get complaints even when we do everything right. So I would challenge you to view complaints as a unique opportunity to respond to the customer, because the complaint can lead to an ultimately better relationship if you make sure to listen to what the customer's saying and not interrupt them. You want to restate the issue to make sure you understand what they're complaining about. So a good way to phrase that would be what I hear you saying is, and then rephrase it. You want to focus on finding a solution. It might not be the solution that the customer wants, but it can be a solution that you two work on together. You want to make sure that you remain calm even if the customer is really angering you or frustrating you. And you want to be able to take responsibility for whatever it is that has gone on and apologize. It's amazing what the power of an apology is. It really will tend to diffuse a lot of anger if you simply say, I'm sorry that happened. So how do you move forward after that? You want to actually resolve the problem, or if you can't do that, find someone who can. This also goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the webinar about having relationships with other companies who may do different things than you do. You might not have the solution for that customer within your company, but you can find someone who does and connect them, and in that way you're really building a relationship with that individual for the future should they need your services. You want to follow through, again, in a timely way, and definitely thank the customer for bringing the issue to your attention. However, once this is all done, I want us to understand that sometimes, for whatever reason, a customer won't respond positively to your attempts at resolution. And that's okay. You're not going to be able to satisfy every person all the time, and not all battles can be won. So if you focus on providing good customer service using some of these tips, then you know you've done your part. And some customers just, again, for reasons that are on them and not about you, they want to complain and they want to be angry. And in those situations, there's really not much you can do except remain calm and hear them out, and know that sometimes you can't keep a customer no matter what you do. So what can we do to facilitate good customer service? Again, very basic things. You want to greet people. You want to thank them when they do something for you. Again, you're the face of the company as far as the customer is concerned. So you want to make sure that you are dressed neatly and appropriately for whatever business that you work in. If you work in a corporate setting, it probably would not be appropriate to wear jeans and sandals. Likewise, if you work at a construction company, you wouldn't want to probably wear a suit to work. So you want to know what's appropriate for your setting. And I really want to also highlight here is asking callers before you put them on speakerphone. How many times has it happened where you're talking to someone, they don't tell you that you're on speakerphone, and you end up saying something that offends someone that you didn't even know was listening? So it's really important to give someone that courtesy of, can I put you on speakerphone? They may not want to be on speakerphone, and that shows a concern for what they want and what they need, okay? And that goes a long way towards keeping your customer base. So what don't we want to do? Well, we don't want to curse around customers. We don't want to tell jokes that are off color, particularly related to religion or politics, which are really hot button issues. It's always best to be on the conservative side at work and not the divisive side. Again, you never know who's within earshot, either on the phone or in person, and it's very hard to change somebody's impression of you once they've formed it. You also don't want to use email for any kind of communication that you would mind being sent out to the whole company. Company email is not private, so anything that you send through that medium needs to be something that is professional and something that you wouldn't mind being public knowledge, especially when it comes to talking about customers. Because things have a way of getting out whether you intend them to or not. So you want to make sure that you're being respectful in all communications about customers, not just to the customer's face. Now, for any of you who may have attended my communication webinar a couple of months ago, you heard a lot about communication in general. And it is very important in customer service. I do want to say now that it's on our RBH YouTube channel. It's archived there if you need a refresher or if you missed it the first time around. So I'm just going to hit the highlights here because effective communication is also super important when dealing with customers. So basically, the gold standard of effective communication is when the person that you're speaking with hears what you meant to say. That's really the goal of any kind of communication. So you want to know, what am I trying to say? What do I want to get out of this interaction? What actions do I need to take? And how will these actions affect those around me? Those are really the basic rules that you want to keep in mind. And again, if you want to hear about this in a more in-depth manner, definitely check out the archived presentation on YouTube. I don't want to take up too much time rehashing that here. I do want us to know that up to 80% of the population will either learn through seeing or hearing, okay? So that's the majority of your customer base. You want to communicate visually or auditorily. There are about 20% of people in the world who communicate more via touch. However, because that's a much smaller base and things are much more likely to be misinterpreted through touch, I would really recommend that you keep your communication to visual and auditory types. So how do we navigate this world where we do a lot of our communication through phone and email? And a lot of us are on the road quite often. Well, there's a few tips to really keep in mind. You notify if somebody is answering your calls for you. You let them know when you're going to be leaving the office, when they can expect you back. And then when you get back to the office, you want to pick up your messages and return those calls. This can often present quite a challenge when you're attending outside meetings, and in that respect, you need to be able to figure out a workable plan for a way to return calls and emails when you're not directly in the office. Again, that goes back to being very organized and prioritizing, where even if a client reaches out to you and you don't have time to address their concern right then, make time in the coming days, set an appointment with that person as your schedule allows so they feel heard and taken care of, and it still allows you to focus on what you're busy with at that moment. Despite having all these tips, we also need to know what actually reduces tension when we may be very stressed when dealing with customers or clients. Especially when we're out of the office, this becomes even more important because being out of the office can also present a lot more stressful situations. I would really recommend counting to 10 before acting or speaking, especially when you've had an interaction with someone that may be upsetting or might anger you. You want to give yourself that 10-second break to just kind of evaluate, is what I'm about to say what I actually want to say? And that will decrease tension because you'll have more control over what you're presenting to other people. The other thing that I want to focus on, which is on the next slide, is deep breathing. When people are stressed, we automatically go into very shallow breathing. It's just something that happens in our nervous system automatically. So if you focus on breathing deeply and counting to 10 each time you inhale, again, it goes a long way towards reducing tension and allowing you to have more control over the responses that you show customers. So with all this said, what is excellence in service? Here's the thing, it can be really fun and really rewarding when you follow these simple principles, and it can make both parties feel good, you as a client or as the business owner. And it's unexpected. Customer service is really becoming a lost art. And when you can surprise someone with really stellar service, you know, it really, again, goes a long way towards helping you retain customers. So I wanted to make sure to leave ample time for discussion and questions because I know that this topic, you know, can really bring up a lot for people. So before I do that, I just want to reiterate, many of you likely know this, but if your company provides benefits through Reliant Behavioral Health, you all have access to a certain number of counseling sessions where if you want to discuss these issues further about either communication or dealing with the public, it would be a great use of the counseling service. And you can see the phone number up here on the screen now, and all you would do is call that phone number and provide us with some basic information and could be connected to speak further with a counselor about these issues. But for now, I want to open up for questions and comments and see how I could address your comments directly. And right now we're just scrolling, so sorry for the quiet, I'm just reading. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry about that. We're having a little bit of a difficult time reading the questions. How honest should you be with customers if the truth can hurt? That's a really, really good question. I tend to say that one should be honest without being hurtful. There is a way to get your point communicated without being personally offensive or personally attacking. I would say to stick to the objective facts and go from there. I would also say to evaluate your motives. Are you being truthful with this person because it's important for furthering the relationship, the business relationship, or are you being truthful with this person because you want to be hurtful? So really evaluate what those motives are and go from there. Next question, I work in healthcare. Many times a patient is upset because of their situation and take it out on me. How can I be sensitive to their healthcare needs, but also firm in standing my ground? I hope that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. And I'll tell you, I worked in healthcare in an inpatient setting for 5 years, and it can be very, very challenging, especially when dealing with patients who are sick and scared, and you might be their one connection, the one person that they see that they can actually kind of vent their frustration with. In those instances, I would say to let the person kind of complain or vent for maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and once that's happened, you could say, just reframe it. You could say, I hear that you're really angry and really frustrated, and I'm glad that you communicated this to me. Here's the plan and what we're doing on the clinical side to help you with this situation, and be very factual and compassionate, but firm in directing the conversation to what's being done, and leave it at that. And there is a certain point where if you feel that you're just being kind of abused or berated, to say, okay, so the way that you're behaving right now is inappropriate, and I'd be happy to speak to you when you calm down. Again, putting limits around the situation, but also communicating that you will listen to them when the situation is calmer. Hopefully that was helpful. The next question is, we have an extremely long wait list to be seen at our clinic, about 6 to 8 months, and many patients are extremely upset. How do I tell them that they are important, but due to resources, we cannot see them right away? You know what? I would say to just say that. And I think this goes back to forming relationships with other area providers. So perhaps if there's a waiting list at your clinic, you could network with other area providers to see if they could see a patient sooner and connect the patient with that resource. If you're not able to do that, for example, if it's somebody who needs to be seen at a VA clinic, I would simply say, you know, I hear your concerns and I'll do what I can, but right now our wait list is about up to 8 months. We can put you in for an appointment on this date. However, if there are cancellations, I'd be happy to take your information and call you sooner. That's probably the way I would handle it. The next question is it appropriate to call customers hun or my dear? I have someone that does that, and I don't feel that it is professional. Great question. You know, it goes back to knowing your workplace. In certain workplaces, it is kind of commonly done that customers are called by nicknames. But it goes back also to knowing your customer base. That does have the potential to be offensive to people, and if that's, you know, since that's a potential issue, I would really recommend against calling any customers by anything other than their given name, because it also, you know, it could have a negative effect on the customer relationship. So my sense is really to stay away from any kind of pet names. Any thoughts on how to disappoint someone but keep rapport? Yes. I would say if you're going to say something that is likely to be disappointing or upsetting, I would say whatever it is, and then I would literally just add, it's really important for me to share this information with you because I'd like our relationship to move forward. How can we do that? I would solicit feedback from the customer about how best to proceed after receiving information that might not be positive. Get their feedback, involve them in the process, ask them how they would like to move forward. Next question. Whenever I'm setting expectations with customers about delivering an answer or something that is time sensitive, I panic and tend to set unrealistic expectations. I overpromise and underdeliver. What is the best way to approach unrealistic or impossible turnaround requests with the customer so that I can more likely underpromise and overdeliver? I think it really goes back to setting the expectation up front. For example, if you are aware that you're someone who overpromises and underdelivers, start changing it today. The next time you get a request for an unrealistic turnaround, I would just put it very bluntly. I would like to follow through with this turnaround time, but I'm not able to do that given my current work demands. I can get you this project by, and then pick a date that it gives you at least a week, if not two, of cushion time. For example, if you think you can get a project to someone by June 1st, I would tell that person that they will have the project by June 10th. That way, it gives you some time to work on it, and when you deliver it by the 3rd or the 4th, they'll be thrilled that it got to them earlier than June 10th. Okay, next question. Hun and my dear is a cultural thing as well. I'm from the South, Louisiana, and it's a natural term. Yep, that goes back to the cultural variations in knowing your workplace. I think also, to return to that question, you could also, if you don't like that somebody is calling you that, I might just say, hey, I'd prefer if you just called me by my first name, and be very upfront about it, because some people are going to be offended and some people will appreciate it as a cultural variation. And be fine with that. So it goes back to the individual differences and setting the boundaries with what you are and are not comfortable with. Okay, I think I've actually answered all the questions that have come through. So if there's not anything else, I will just wish you a great afternoon, and I definitely want to thank all of you for attending, and I want to thank Brenda Allen for dealing with the computer and the questions and helping me out with the technical stuff. So have a great afternoon.